Hi, Norm. This is Mark Taylor-Canfield reporting live from Seattle, where we just heard from the Icelandic consulate that Martians have invaded Iceland and are demanding to be taken to their leader, Queen Bjork. Also, Boehner has joined Alcoholics Anonymous and has now founded a support group for alcoholic Republican Congress members called the GOP Temperance League. So, a good high temperature.
I think that's too bad.
Reported on the East Coast, including widespread power outages because the grid can't seem to handle the extra electricity being used to operate millions of air conditioners in New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. Apparently, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, and the girls have planted palm trees and banana trees, which are doing quite well at the White House, and Myrtle Beach has been opened early for bathing as thousands flock to the beach to cool down. Sales of Kool-Aid have gone through the roof as right-wing conservatives continue to claim that global climate change does not exist.
We're going to get to the bottom of it.
Hey, and Mark, a very happy April Fool's Day to you, sir.
I think that's too bad.
Fools, everybody.
Happy April Fool's Day.
I have a true story, though.
Go ahead.
I have a true story that sounds like a joke, but it's not. Former President Jimmy Carter was on the Thom Hartmann Show today and said Al Gore won the 2000 election. He also said, but when the Supreme Court makes a decision in this country, we have to follow their decision. But he said that was not a joke. That was not a joke, ladies and gentlemen. That was our former President of the United States. Still out there kicking butt as far as I can tell.
As far as I know, the various recounts of what happened after the Supreme Court stopped the voting, and the New York Times, the most authoritative one, if memory serves me right, showed that Al Gore, in fact, did win, and that was despite Katherine Harris purging 50,000, give or take, African Americans, the vast majority of whom would have voted for Al Gore, purging them from the polls with no reason to do so, despite the butterfly ballot down in South Florida that confused a bunch of older folks who ended up voting for Pat Buchanan, even though they wanted to vote for Al Gore, all the voter suppression efforts that went on in Florida, still with all that, with Ralph Nader getting 90,000 votes, with all of that, Al Gore still won, but not by enough to get past the fraud margin, by the theft margin. That let the Supreme Court come in. And Mark, I do believe, and this is not an April Fool's joke, I do believe that when the final history of the American, United States is written, 100, 200, 300, whatever years from now, they will trace the decline and fall of the American empire to that Supreme Court decision in 2000. Mark, I got to run, but thank you so much for the April Fool's joke. And you know what? When I was a younger guy, you notice how I said that, younger guy? Maybe, all right, when I was a young guy, I would have done an April Fool's joke on you, but, so if you want to do an April Fool's joke, that's fine. I mean, I went right along with Mark Taylor-Canfield on that one. But if you want to do it, hey, let's do that.
I can't do that.
I mean, I could do that.
I can't do that.
I've got another civics class for you. You're going to love this one. This one is more
Fierce
than civics.
independence means using technology to get the audio and video content you want on your schedule 24/7, 365. Check out Beyond the Norm at normangoldman.com. It's like a DVR for your ears. This is the Norman Goldman Show.
There's no lights, no water. We can't flush.
I think that's too bad.
Compelling content on the air and online. abqtalk.com. This is KABQ AM 1350.
The IRS.
I don't share this with folks very often, although I did write a Huffington Post blog post about it a couple of years ago. The Constitution is in serious need of updating. It is in serious need of updating. I can think of like half a dozen amendments that we really desperately need now. One of them, totally rewriting the Supreme Court and the other federal courts, putting term limits on them, creating a pool for the candidates so you can't get these politicians just plucking people out from the back bench of someplace simply because they're a political apparatchik. I mean, there are ways that the Supreme Court needs to be seriously reworked. There are ways that Congress needs to be seriously reworked. There are all kinds of fixes that we need to do, and I like your idea of limiting a president's pardon power. I mean, look what George W. Bush did with Scooter Libby. Right? Scooter Libby was tried and convicted, and it was a George W. Bush appointee, Judge Reggie Walton, who was about to punish Scooter Libby, and then George W. Bush commuted his sentence, right? I mean, and the judge, and George W. Bush's judge, Reggie Walton, he freaked out. He said, "Man, this is outrageous."
Yeah, it's completely unethical. I mean, within its concept, I understand the idea behind pardoning in the first place, but when you're able to do it in your own administration, where is the accountability? You can do whatever you want, it's okay. We're going to get pardoned.
Well,
the next guy in, who's taken as part of my administration, is going to pardon me.
Chris, it's a great point. I mean, look, the Republicans went berserk when President Clinton, literally on his way out the door, pardoned Mark Rich, right? The guy who was the fugitive financier. Oh, the Republicans went berserk. But, of course, they never went berserk when George Herbert Walker Bush pardoned Casper Weinberger for all of his illegality in the Iran-Contra thing, right? I mean, this is a very political process here. Chris, I love your idea, and let's add it to the market basket of things that we need to do to update the Constitution, because the Constitution is in serious need of updating. And if you're sitting there thinking, Norm, why don't we just have another constitutional convention? I have a thought for you in response. Would you want to sit down to the Constitutional Convention with Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann, Ted Cruz? Because that's who's going to show up. When we had our first Constitutional Convention, the one that gave us this Constitution, the states nominated the delegates. Yes, they did. They weren't just like self-appointed dudes who showed up and said, "Hi there, let's do the Constitution." I mean, they were appointed by their states. They were sent there as delegates. And we'll do it that way again. If we have another Constitutional Convention, we're going to have delegates appointed by the states. And who do you think Louisiana's going to send? Who do you think Texas is going to send? Come on. The Constitutional Convention, if we had a new one, would look, it'd be like, it would make a food fight look fun. 1-888. Come on. The Constitutional Convention, if we had a new one, would look, it'd be like, it would make a food fight look fun.
Ryan Williams explains.
Archbishop from Atlanta, Wilton Gregory, has apologized for building a $2.2 million mansion for himself. Responding to complaints, Gregory said he is willing to sell the place and move to more humble digs.
I'm Paige Hopkins, NBC News Radio.